Good morning, Jimmy.
Good morning, Shadab.
Congratulations. This is our 50th episode.
Woohoo!
We
Big
made
applause in
it.
the classroom.
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost coincided with the 50th anniversary of Microsoft. So, not bad.
Yeah,
Um, so, on this 50th episode, we will talk about several things that has happened this week. We'll keep the regular the format. We also actually have released the guest episode, so want everybody to check that out. There is a guest episode on the vibe coding that was released just yesterday. It's available for anyone to actually listen to it. Must do that. Okay,
yeah,
highly recommend it.
yeah. That was a great episode by Dan. So hopefully everyone gets a chance to watch it, see it, because not only did he go through vibe coding, but we also gave him a on the spot application to build in Cursor. So definitely check it out if you haven't already.
Absolutely. And in this week, just quick teaser notes. We have a lot to talk about. GPT 4.1 models came out with their variants like Mini and the first ever Nano models, which kind of outperform GPT 4o. And on the other hand, OpenAI also released o4-mini and o3 model. And yes, I mean, the math is completely, out of sequence here. So we'll talk about that. But then OpenAI is also debating creating a social media network as well as buying an agentic coding kind of workspace like windsurf. Okay,
Yeah,
so a lot to talk about there.
yeah. Not to be outdone, Google has not rest from Google Next. They are going to be starting out to rolling out a early version of Gemini 2.5 Flash, and that's something that we'll walk through. Also, is the fact that Microsoft put out a computer use integration within Copilot Studio for AI automation.
And of course, there is actually other companies also out there like Cohere, and they have actually launched a model called the Embed 4 for the multimodal embedding.
And we'll wrap it up with yet again another small little piece on OpenAI with their GPT-4o transcribe and GPT-4o mini transcribe. And again, that's speech to text models that outperform previous benchmarks from OpenAI and other companies. So with that, looking forward to this episode.
Gonna be exciting. Stay tuned. Greetings. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay up to date on the AI, this is the podcast for you. I'm Shadab Hussain. I'm the director of AI at Microsoft, and I'm your co-host.
Hello, everybody. Jamie Basilico, as you know already. I'm the other co-host here for the AI Files. My day job is a data and AI technical specialist and architect. And as a reminder, please note this is not an official Microsoft channel, so the views and opinions expressed by myself and Shadab are our own and do not represent the views of Microsoft.
This week, in the code of the week, I think it's worth mentioning some of the vision that Mustafa Suleiman, who is a Microsoft AI CEO, has actually shared about. So, it's not something very new. It's was talked about a couple of weeks ago, but I think there are some interesting data points that came about, and I wanted to actually share that with this context, right? So, first of all, let me quote what Mustafa Suleiman, the CEO of Microsoft AI, said, right? In his own words, quoting him, an AI companion is completely personal, built around individual needs, values, and expectations. And that's why ultimately there will be as many different copilots as there are people using them. Today, we are embarking on the journey to take Copilot from an AI companion to your AI companion. Unquote. So I think pretty profound, and I would say reflective of the trend that's going around, like in terms of how people are looking at the AI assistants from the time when it was considered a highly skeptical and people were paranoid about it. But I think we have come around and people are now like looking at really using them as AI companion. And that's what Mustafa Suleiman is actually talking about, that with these models becoming AI companions, you can, for example, the co-pilot will understand you in the context of your life and show up on your terms in the right way at the right time. And it will also, it's like a new kind of relationship with technology. It's a new era that he's talking about. He's also talking about, like, for example, focusing on the fundamentals as part of this journey, like engaging personality or incredible search capability, right? Or for example, bespoke podcast, with including of features like deep research. You can have a world class researcher working alongside you, right? With the shopping, you have like a trusted, impartial partner, helping you with the comparison and finding the best products and things like that. And with actions, the co-pilot can actually do things on your behalf, taking away some burden from you. So I guess, this companion or the assistant, howsoever like to call it, is going to be far more personal. It will be more intimate in terms of it knows you much better, and you really treat it like a very trusted companion, right? Somebody whom you can trust. So I think we have come a long way from the last couple of years, where people are looking at these as a more of a the companion term. And to prove that point, here is the chart. Okay, and this chart is based on there was an actually article published in Harvard Business Review just recently. This is actually from a company called filtered.com. They've been tracking about the different use cases and the usage of the Gen AI, how people are making use of it. And you can see in this chart, some of it could be actually a bit difficult to read. And anyway, we have podcast listeners, so let me read out some of these things. It's a list of several of the use cases in which people are using it, right? And in 2024, the use cases which were like topping the charts were like, number one was generating ideas, okay, in 2024. um, and then the number two was like therapy or companionship. The third was scientific search. The fourth was editing text, and the fifth was exploring topics of interest. And there were a bunch of other things. In 2025, the top five list is like this. Number one is therapy or companionship, which was like number two use case. So, it has jumped up. But then there are new use cases coming into the list. Like the number two is organizing my life, which is a new use case. Number three is finding purpose. That's amazing, actually, right? I mean, things which are like reserved for the the spiritual gurus and somebody like a figure in your life. And now you're using those to actually find the purpose in life. And there are things like enhanced learning, which was like number 8 in 2024. Now it's now number 4, and the number fifth is generating code. So it's being used a lot for the coding as well, which was interestingly in 2024 was only at number 47. Huge jump. Jamie, what do you think about this, such a transformation of Gen AI between 2024 and 2025?
It speaks to the way that people are starting to look at and or adopt these tools. I think back to what was just announced, what was it, maybe about a week or two ago, from OpenAI with their memory feature. And it's about, at least with the memory feature, it's about to know you, like getting a better sense of what you are, what you like to do, and how it might relate to the things that are generated. And I look at, whether it's these studies and or the things that Microsoft is planning to do with interacting or interrelating the things within Copilot to yourself. It's about how do you as a person really get the most out of these tools. And again, whether or not it's these themes and the types of content that's being created and how people are using it, it ties back always to you, like what's most important to you. So I see these things, whether or not it's looking at trends and the way people are doing or using these AI tools, comes back to how are these tools learning about you, whether or not you like it or not, different story. But the tools will learn about what your top interests are. What are the things that you're constantly looking at, and where potentially where do you want to go, and helping you down a path that maybe you didn't even know about, because it knows more about you than you think you know about yourself. So anyway, it starts to get a little philosophical and into the mind of a person, but that's kind of where we're starting to embark today. And I'm personally thrilled on where this could go, and I know this sometimes might be, I know some people are afraid of how these tools are going to learn and know about you, but this literally speaks back to what you were talking about with Mustafa and his thought, his vision, his leadership, and we're seeing it in practical cases where some of these AI foundational companies are actually building these things into the tools to make it even better. So
Yeah, and the final data point on this slide I wanted to actually draw the attention to is if you see the last chart here on the right, it's basically the categorization of use cases across the themes, and what it shows is there are like about 6 themes here. The number one being technical assistance and troubleshooting, which was number one theme in 2024, about at 33%. It actually dropped down to just 15% in 2025. Doesn't mean that people are using it less. It's just that the share, the distribution of that theme has gone down a lot. Um, Now, the theme which really jumped up, okay, pretty much every other theme remained constant, like content creation, editing, almost same, just little drop, in fact, 21% to 18%. Um, the theme that really jumped up is 17% to 31% is a personal and professional support. Again, highlighting the same kind of use case that we just talked about. So that's really the transformation of Gen AI between 2024 to 2025. What it also means is that that people are using this a lot more in the personal space now compared to just at the workspace, I think. So that's what really it highlights.
yeah, and I mean, you can see that, as you said, the top 10 use cases. I mean, healthier living. I think of personal support as being I don't want to go and say it's a psychiatrist in a model, but people are turning to these tools to provide some quick thoughts or answers on things that they may be interacting with or seeing in their own personal life. In some cases, it's easier to talk about your feelings or situations, whether it's family members, friends, to talk to it with a computer and getting some advice, some sound advice back, than it might be to talk to somebody else. Now, again, I'm not saying it should replace therapists or anything for that matter, but whether it's trying to figure out your best healthy meal plan or your best workout routine, or in some cases, like, tell me about some advice that I'm having with my boyfriend or girlfriend. Those are the types of things that people are turning to. And you see that in some of these results, especially as you just mentioned, the professional support scenario or
Yeah.
personal support scenario.
And Jimmy, you like actually cooking. Have you ever used
Oh, yeah.
it for
Um,
cooking
and
purposes?
yes, I actually did it last week. After a while, when you have chicken, there's only so much, breaded chicken cutlets that you would want to do and eat. So I literally took a picture of ingredients that I had in my cabinet, along with things that were in my refrigerator, snapped it and said, please make me something or come up with a recipe. And it literally did. And it was a lemon chicken with a lemon honey mustard chicken, something like that. So, I mean, yes, I use it for everything from coding to cooking chicken.
Great. You're truly living AI era actually now. Okay. Um, Great. Let's talk about some of the other things now. So, moving on, I think this week we will talk about some of the news first. And some of the news are, I think, around Jamie, what is cooking in OpenAI's lab now?
Yeah, I don't think it's ever a dull moment that we don't see something with OpenAI. I think everyone probably knows that there's this, I'll just say, ongoing feud between Sam Altman and Elon Musk. There's a long history there. If people didn't know, Elon Musk was part of the initial, investors within OpenAI, but there's some, long-standing history of not seeing eye to eye on where, OpenAI should go. And there's some lawsuits that were put out there. There was actually even a hostile takeover bid, or at least something floated out there to take over OpenAI, and then a counter bid for. So there's a lot of history. So why do I mention that? Well, there's some rumors floating around, nothing substantiated where Sam Altman has come out and said exactly what they're going to be building, but OpenAI is developing a social network similar to X, aka similar to Twitter, where the focus will be on integrating ChatGPT's image generation capabilities into a social feed. So yeah, I look at this as it, I don't want to say it only makes sense, but there's so many things that OpenAI is starting to do. Obviously it's generating, content, all the top trends that we just talked about in terms of use, but it's now, doing search. And I know I use it in some cases to do searching rather than just going out to Google or Bing. So this could be this next iteration of what it moves to, next as far as what GPT is. And I say it makes sense because think about the data that would potentially be available to something like chat or the GPT models or the O models for utilizing the data that comes out of a social network. So that would provide, obviously very various types of data, unique data, real-time data, and it would use that to actually train its models. So, the what's been kind of floated out there is that, yeah, it's in a prototype phase. Definitely nothing you or I can actually test, but it's internal to OpenAI at the moment. And as I said, I haven't seen anything that definitively says this is what it is or it's coming out in this date. But it's been rumored that CEO Sam Altman is seeking feedback from various different organizations, people to provide details on what should be improved upon or other integration points. So, what is very unknown at this point is this going to be a separate platform? Is this going to be integrated somehow into ChatGPT? And, again, remember some of the things that we just talked about a couple of weeks ago. ChatGPT is the most downloaded and used globally based Gen AI app right now in the world. So you've got all these people at their fingertips to actually do that. So anyway, that's quick news. We'll see where that goes. I think it's interesting for several different reasons. One, from the ongoing feud. Two, from the data that they could tap into, and three, where will the masses of people go if this truly gets released? I think that given their user base, I think it could be pretty widely adopted.
Yeah, actually, I was initially, Jamie, when I read this news, I thought that, why? I mean, there are already plenty of social media platforms. In fact, social media platforms are not necessarily rising, right? I mean, there are, in fact, Zuckerberg actually recently talked about that, the social trends are changing, the people are having less friends, that, that in fact, the Facebook is kind of declining, right? And I was thinking that, okay, what is the need of it? But then you started thinking about, okay, the possibility here. And suddenly I was actually quite excited about this idea, that given that the chat GPT has already almost what, like 400 million kind of user
Right.
base, 300, 400 million user base, like active weekly, and they're pretty active, right? Compared to, let's say, X, which is like rumored to be about like 400 to 600, somewhere between that. It's a user base which is actually declining on the X. So we don't have, they stopped publishing some of the usage figures now, but it's not widely different, right? Compared to between the two platforms, number one. So ChatGPT does have an ability to very easily convert into social media because they already have so many users. And it is such an exciting idea, right? I mean, you can generate an image, show it. You can probably also do some really nice prompts and show that off, right? You can generate a lot of things and you can show that off. And it becomes easy since you're already using that in chat gpt. It becomes easy, right? You can even share, like some of the research report that you've created. Once I started to think about more, like what are the possibilities, I think it is pretty exciting. I would warm up to the idea and sign up if they launch that.
Yeah, I would too, in a heartbeat. I guess if it comes through ChatGPT, we'll already be signed up. So,
Exactly.
other news from OpenAI, and again, this one is interesting, just on the heels of what we just had as a guest episode for vibe coding. But OpenAI is reportedly in talks to buy Windsurf for a valuation of around $3 billion. So those that don't know, Windsurf, which used to be known as Codium, is another one of these vibe coding tools, very similar to Cursor. So the reported amount here that's being floated around, as I said, is it's just shy of $3 billion. It's got a $2.85 billion valuation. And that's been reported by TechCrunch last February, so just a couple months ago. So the interesting thing here is I look at these valuations, but these companies haven't made a ton of money, but it's definitely growing. And I think the importance here is it's not necessarily so much about the user base or the money that these companies are generating right now, but it's about how are they going to integrate even tighter with these foundational model companies that are focused on at least one segment of their user population, which is on the developers. And I would say it even raises farther than that, because the thought here is it's not the developer that's the true target, although that's the people that are using it now. It's how can anybody create applications, and if you have the code base for something like Windsurf or something like Cursor integrated into your tools, well, potentially that makes it a lot easier for anybody and everybody to create a full-fledged agent-based or agent-created code, or I don't even want to say code, application or use case. So to me, that's sort of the important backdrop to this. I mentioned Cursor, just a little comparison. Cursor is the tool that I use, just full disclosure, and that's what you had seen Dan on our guest episode. Hopefully you saw that, as I mentioned before. But Cursor is another company in the space. They have a lot bigger revenue. They are 200 million in annual rate of return versus Windsurf, which is around 40 million. But Cursor's got a much bigger valuation, around 10 billion. So Windsurf definitely is used by a lot of people, but it's not as big as Cursor. But if OpenAI is going after some company, let's go after like either the best in class or the second best and get it at a lower price point. So that's actually what we're seeing here. Interesting side note: Windsurf was only founded a couple of years ago, in 2021, by two folks that were both MIT graduates. It's Varun Mohan and Douglas Chen, and they were both childhood friends. So I love that backstory to this. Two kids that grew up together, went to MIT. Obviously, they've got some brains and some smarts, but also had some business acumen to actually create something that didn't exist or was just in some infancy phases. And now they're looking at potentially a $3 billion payday. Not bad.
That reminds me, actually, Jamie, of myself. I and one of my childhood friend, actually, we both we grew up together. We went to different colleges for the engineering, but for the MBA, we went to actually the same. And throughout our childhood, our only dream was that, okay, we wanted to launch our own business. Okay, we are still dreaming. It still hasn't happened. Honestly, we did try though. We did try a few enterprising ideas. It hasn't worked. We even went to the venture capitalist contest actually back in 2001 at Singapore. We did not win, of course. Otherwise, we won't be having this position at Microsoft. But the idea was good, actually. In fact, but it's just that I think what is important is what I realized through my experiences is that it's not really the idea, it's the courage, right? That's what it takes. It's a courage, it's a commitment, it's a grit that it takes. There are plenty of bad ideas, or average ideas, I would say, not bad ideas probably. They have been turned into pretty profitable business, and plenty of good ideas which have really honestly failed. So I think, but anyway, I digress. But I think it just reminded me a little bit of nostalgic. Anyway, all right, let's see what else we have actually this week to talk about. some of the other things. But when we talk about OpenAI, I think it's not very unrelated to it. Also, I always talk about NVIDIA, right? I mean, OpenAI will not be OpenAI if it was not for NVIDIA, and NVIDIA is facing actually some impact now because of the tariffs but then also the US export restrictions is going to restrict NVIDIA and potentially deal it a $5.5 billion financial impact, okay, due to new restrictions. So in advance, like exporting its advanced AI chips to China. What they're also trying to do is they're actually trying to build the manufacturing here in states, like working with TSMC. They have like multiple factories, etc., that they're actually working with. They plan to actually invest up to $500 billion to actually build AI supercomputers here within the US. So I think that's going to be pretty exciting. That's a really good amount of investment, but they need to actually shift their priorities and deal with some of these financial impact in the short term. So at this point of time, Nvidia's stock actually came really low with all this impact in the recent time. I think this news impact probably a little bit more. Again, they're trending very low. In the long run, I think it is still a winning horse, to be honest.
Yeah, we're definitely not a financial investment podcast, but to me, this is it's a buy signal. I definitely have faith in NVIDIA, whether or not different policy rules, things will change over time. So hopefully, we'll see some dollars move upwards on that. But in the long
Yeah.
run, we know that in order to provide the computing power that we need, not only for today, but for tomorrow, for all of these different models that we're talking about, you need hardware. So, whether it's NVIDIA, some of these other companies that are actually creating some of their chips, but I think NVIDIA will be just fine over a period of time. Might be a little rough and choppy over the next 6 months to a year, but long term, I don't see any problem.
That's true. In fact, my daughters, they are in high school and they do some simulation exercise, right? As part of their studying, they have to actually like take some stocks and invest in it. And, it's, I think, part of their financial literacy courses. So they asked me my advice. And 6 months ago, I told them that, hey, go invest in, and it's a theoretical, right? I mean, they're actually not putting the actual money, but theoretically, they're putting that, okay, I'm investing here. So they invested in NVIDIA. I told them, okay, invest in Microsoft, NVIDIA, and a bunch of tech companies as well. And now they are asking me, Papa, you told me about NVIDIA, and now I'm losing money on it.
Yeah.
So, and I actually parroted the same thing that, okay, hey, I'm not a financial advisor. Invest at your own peril.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to the world of financial investing. Speaking of potential perils, so there was one of the tech investors, Victor Lazard, came out, I guess it was just recently, about warning of AI's potential power to replace certain professions entirely rather than just assisting them. So the two areas that he kind of cited were in the legal space as well as HR recruiting. So, if you think about it, legal or lawyers and recruiters could potentially be higher at risk because many of these entry-level tasks in these fields could now be automated through the power of AI. And you just think about it like I'm doing discovery work or when you think about doing HR-related recruitment, there's things that could be streamlined, such as candidate sourcing. How do I screen a particular candidate? How do I do interview scheduling with the various different people? That's all something that individuals actually do today, which totally can be automated. And AI, I would presume, could actually do a better job in some cases than some of the individuals that are actually doing that. So that will cut down on potential costs from companies, cuts down on time significantly. So those are things that organizations are going to want to pursue putting their dollars in, and at the same token, those would be less dollars than hiring, the junior lawyer or the recruiting analyst or HR person. So this is an area that potentially could see higher impact with positions, and I'm sure that there's others as well. These are the two that Victor had kind of cited within his sort of positioning that are out there. So just something to be kind of aware of. And I truly do believe that, AI is certainly going to help individuals be more productive, but there will be some fields that are going to be impacted by the use of AI. So yeah, we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, I think Jamie, and I know that you work a lot with the, I think, legal industry customers as well. I have a customer who also does some services to the legal industry, and they're coming with left and right, like lots of great products actually based on AI. So I think it makes total sense that I think the legal and the hiring, they are a lot of repetitive tasks there, and it's
Right.
easy to actually automate them. Even reasoning, right? I mean, not just repetitive, but even repetitive reasoning tasks also can be easily automated. So I think no wonder there is so much going on in the legal industry, particularly.
Yeah, I mean that you're not going to replace every lawyer, but this will augment them things. And if you have 10 lawyers in a firm, maybe you only need 6 of them, whatever the number may be, because now you've got AI to do that. So I know there's other news going on out there. What's going out in the world in AI startups?
Oh yeah, the AI startup, Jamie. That's another area where tons of money is just floating, right? And particularly the companies who haven't even done anything yet, right? Safe Super Intelligence (SSI). It's an AI startup that was co-founded by the former OpenAI chief scientist Elias Escobar, right? So, and of course, he's one of the brightest mind. So, of course, it's known fact that the investors don't invest in just the product; they actually mostly invest in the people. Um, it's becoming more and more clear now. Of course, there are times when the people are not proven. The product is brilliant, and people do take chances there. But a lot often, what we have seen is in the VC circle, people actually invest in the investors go for the people more than the product. And if they see that, okay, the people are proven, even if they're the product ideas and it's not ready and it's far away, they still invest. And which is what we see here right now. For example, Safe Super Intelligence, is actually already valued at $32 billion in the recent funding round. And it's trying to, of course, create the super intelligence or the AGI, um, and it's a research lab, so they need a lot of computing power. So of course the Alphabet has stepped in, and they are going to actually invest. They will also provide the SSI with the TPUs, the tensor processing unit, and this is one of the first time that they are actually going to provide that outside. Generally it was reserved more for the internal purposes as well. So that's one example. The other example is actually Mira Murati, right, the former CTO of OpenAI. She has her own startup, which is again just 6 months ago, I think, and this is like it's called Thinking Machines Lab. And Thinking Machines is also already valued at 9 to 10 billion dollar, and she's looking at 1 to 2 billion. In fact, the latest news is that she's looking for $2 billion of seed round, which is the first round of the investment. And that's unbelievable, right? There is no product. Nobody even knows what product they have. Like, I mean, at least in the public, right? Of course, the investor will have some idea about where the direction they're going, but it's just unbelievable, right? The amount of money. And just because of the quality of the people, the investors are ready to throw in their money. Okay.
Yeah, it's amazing at the valuations of some of these companies that don't necessarily have anything yet. But it's like you said up front, it's not about the products and things that they're offering at this point in time. It's the potential of what they're going to offer in the future. And it goes back to the people. So people are investing in people. That's really what I take out of all this. And obviously the hottest craze is anything, you put AI in front of anything, and you're going to get some attraction to investors.
Hey, Jamie, how much do you think we can get? You go out and ask for money saying that, hey, invest in us. We will figure out the product.
I'm game. I'm starting to already think about some things we could develop.
Yeah, maybe zillion, right? Okay. Hey, another news, Jamie. Major publishers have actually launched a campaign called "Stop AI Theft," and this like includes the New York Times, Washington Post, etc. And they're launching this ad campaign. Essentially, they're saying that okay, that the protect the intellectual properties, protect the all these the theft that is happening by the AI models and training. They're training actually based on this. Latest example is like that Ghibli, that people are of course questioning that, right? Of course, if the GPT-4o is able to do this Ghibli image generation, that means it has been trained on that, right? So was there permission, things like that. So I think those are the questions that keep coming. Now there is a very interesting perspective that I read about from James Cameron, of course, world famous director. He's actually on the board of Stable Diffusion. He joined that board and he's actually experimenting with the Stable Diffusion's models in actually, of course, the filmmaking, etc. And he talks about that, like the demand for content is going low, particularly from the studios, because of course there are a lot of streaming companies out there. So they are trying to figure out how to cut the cost as well. And he says that like the AI models can actually help doing that. It can cut down that the cost of like those CG effects and VFX and etc. by 50%, and that could actually help. But he also mentioned something very interesting, and his perspective is this. He says that, quoting him, a lot of the hesitation in Hollywood and entertainment in general are issues of the source material for the training data and who deserves what and copyright protection and all that sort of thing. I think people are looking at it all wrong. I'm an artist. Anybody that is an artist, anybody that's a human being is a model. You cannot control my input. You cannot tell me what to view and what to see and where to go. My input is whatever I choose it to be and whatever has accumulated throughout my life. My output, every script I write, should be judged on whether it's too close, too plagiaristic, whatever. It's a different perspective, right? That okay, the input doesn't matter. Input is just like what we also consume. Of course, we have also consumed a lot of copyrighted content, right, in our life and learning these things, and then we produce something. So is it a theft? Is it AI theft? No, I mean probably not, right? I mean, because we are also learning based on a lot of those content and legally, and then we are creating something. Now if we create something which is too close to what we have just simply copied, that it becomes a copy, right? It becomes a copyright issue. But if it is inspired by that, and if it has its own distinct mark, then it should not be. That's what James Cameron is actually talking about. So from his perspective, it's input and training doesn't matter. It's what it creates as an output. How close is it to that source material? That's what it matters.
Yeah, there's definitely, like you said, a lot of hesitation in Hollywood for use of these models, video generation, music generation. I think over time, these different industry, leaders, studios will, they're adopting it. They're getting on the boards, like you said. So they're providing some not only input on how and what these things should develop, but then also the IP that's related to it for the intellectual property and the content. So definitely a interesting story and areas that will certainly evolve. Speaking of evolving, let's talk about some launches. So Google, as we mentioned before, they had their Google.next, and they haven't stopped after that. There's a lot that they're pushing out, and one of those things that they just kind of released is the Gemini 2.5 Flash model. So this one's interesting because it actually pushes together a hybrid model, which is really reasoning and also the traditional transformer, but it also does it very cost efficiently. If you remember, just whatever it was, the last week, they had pushed out the Gemini 2.5 Pro, which is their flagship head of the class model. This Flash model, again, brings in the capabilities, but the real capability here is price performance and the ability to have a reasoning model. So this version really builds upon what was the foundational piece within 2.0 Flash. The improvements here, again, are the reasoning capability, but also the speed and efficiency. And it does this by it being its first fully fledged hybrid model, which, what does that mean? It allows developers to turn on or off the thinking. And that will equate to, well, how does that then change the cost of the model? So that allows a developer to juggle the balance between cost, overall latency, but then the quality of the output of that. So even with thinking off, again, we're talking about the higher reasoning type of capabilities within the model. Even if you take that off, individual developers, people that are using this, they're getting blazingly fast speed with improved performance over Flash. So let me repeat that again. If you're even turning off the reasoning capability of the 2.5 Flash, you're getting faster results and you're getting better results off of 2.0 Flash. So this thinking process, as I mentioned before, it understands, the various different complex tasks, how to break that down. Will actually plan out the response, and ultimately that leads to more accurate information, just like any other reasoning model. So these could be, we see areas from some of the benchmarks, its ability to solve more math problems or have it solve it more completely, analyze research questions, being able to create extensive plans off of schedules that are needed. So, I think back to as the industry starts to build more and more agents, now you've got a model that you can turn on and turn off some of these planning or some of these reasoning features when you need that agent to actually use it. As I mentioned already, the price performance ratio is a lot better, and that's the chart that you're actually seeing here. You see the ability, actually, let me just explain some of the details on the chart that's on the screen. You've got a view of basically price performance tokens. It's the cost of the model. So obviously something like Gemini 2.0 Flash Lite is the most cost-effective model in terms of its ability to run things at a low cost per million token, but also the score. So the score on the left is one of those benchmark models. And you see the ability, yes, it's a little bit more costly, obviously, for something like Gemini 2.5 Flash Preview, which is the one that we're talking about. But that model is higher performing on the benchmark than, let's say, the 2.0 Flash, a little bit more costly, but it's still way below where the 2.5 Pro version is, but it's edging closer to where the Pro model is, but doing it at a lower cost. And I think that's the real crux of what, wanted to kind of point out here, is that this new model brings this higher performance ratio, doing it at a lower cost, but it's even closer to the 2.0 or 2.5 Pro model itself. So the availability of this right now is available in the Gemini API through the Google AI Studio, as well as the Vertex Studio. So speaking of models, I know, Shadab, you've got some updates for us on the OpenAI GPT-4o world, right?
Okay. So of course, there is a OpenAI always behind, and chasing like all kind of new models, and here it is, GPT 4.1. But here's the thing, Jamie. First of all, the entire sequencing or the naming convention has gone haywire here. We had GPT 4.5 and now we have GPT 4.1. Okay. So that is, that's like unbelievable naming. Now, of course, people are making fun. In fact, Sam Altman himself says that, okay, yes, you are allowed to actually make fun. We are going to get this all in control when we go to GPT-5. We totally agree that, yes, it's right now it's actually messed up. But I also believe that it is actually it's a very smart move, and it's a really good example of how you should go about with your business strategy. The reason I'm saying is that GPT 4.5 is flop. Okay. it's just too expensive. It was a great model. It's it's just a model that actually has a really good quality in terms of the humor and the creativity and the writing quality, content, etc. But the price was so high. It was, I think, almost four times or something. It was
13,
so high. Oh wow,
13
13
times.
times, right? So unbelievable, right? So, and no wonder that, of course, the organization did not adopt to it, right?
Yeah,
And
just
also, I think it was in preview. So,
yeah, a couple of things on that. So, the 4.5 itself, in my opinion, was let's put something out there. Let's see what the reaction is of
yeah,
individuals, companies. Yeah, it had a super high price tag. I mean, like I said 13 times, depending on some metrics, it was as high as 30 times more expensive. So, the adoption was going to be obviously certainly low, but I think they learned enough in terms of, well, how are people using it? What are the use cases? So, we may see things of 4.5 get sprinkled into the 5.0 model whenever it's released, and maybe there's some things within the 4.1 model. And as far as naming, by the way, the 4.5 model is going away, so it's going to be deprecated. So hopefully there's
correct.
no confusion from people on that. And as far as the naming of these new models, I think it makes sense because you see other organizations. We were just talking about Google, right? You've got the Flash model. It's about um, um, a platform of different models. And in this case, right now, it makes it real simple. It's GPT 4.1. You want
Yeah,
a
exactly.
big
I mean,
version? You want a mini version, or do you want a really even small version, which
the,
aligns with some of the things that
correct.
OpenAI's competitors are doing? Anyway, I don't want to jump too far ahead.
Correct, correct. Same thing like what Anthropic has, right? They have like three different level of models. In fact, Meta has also done the same thing, right? If they're Meta 4, now they have a Scout, they have Maverick, which is mid-size. Scout is the lowest size, which is kind of like a Nano here, or Flash. And then we have Behemoth, right?
Yep.
Behemoth actually is still not out. Uh, and kind of aligns with what Gemini has. So I think like everybody is kind of aligning at three kind of size model, which I would say that I will give credit to like Anthropic. I think they kind of started it with like the Haiku, which is like its smallest one, and then they had the Sonnet, and then they have the Opus. Now Opus and Behemoth, and these models are so large. To be honest, like Opus 3.5, I believe was never released because I think they're just so large that it just no use of it, right? Because they will be too expensive and too large to actually use it. Probably something similar has happened with GPT 4.5. We don't know whether 4.5 pricing was it a test to see if there is an appetite for that price point. But what they say is that it was a very compute intensive model. So I think maybe they were experimenting with something else, some different kind of compute or something, but it was coming out very compute. But GPT 4.1 is not. It's actually 25% cheaper than the GPT 4o. So it is not, even though it is a step up. You can see here on all the charts here that GPT 4.1 is actually better model than the GPT 4 Omni. And you can see here like GPT 4.1 is performing pretty much in all the evals. It's performing better than the GPT 4o. So it's kind of a GPT 4.1 is a no-brainer. GPT 4. Moving to GPT 4.5 was definitely not a good move. Now you can also see like one of the interesting eval here is this Sui Lancer, Jamie. This is actually you can see the dollar figures here, right? So the dollar figures are essentially there is a company Upworks, right, which is like a crowdsourcing company, and they have actually lots of different tasks. When you complete those tasks, and if you are the top one, you actually get paid, right? That's how the Upworks work. I've also worked with some of the crowdsourcing companies like this. There is a company called Top Coder. Again, you bid. Essentially, developers bid for a work. They actually create the output. There could be, let's say, for example, 100 entries for a particular task, and the best one gets paid. And if nobody achieves the criteria, the success criteria, nobody gets paid. So it's like a really win-win for the employer, or the one who is launching the bid, because they get the best of the best competing and giving them the output. Really good model. But anyway, coming back to this, so this eval, what it does is it actually has like $1 million worth of the task available, and they test these models against that. Okay, how many of those can be accomplished with these models? So I think that's what the dollar figure actually shows. Anyway, coming back to this, you can see some of these charts here. GPT 4.1, how it is actually pretty good model. It's kind of a no-brainer, as I said, to move. It's really good in coding. It is optimized for better handling of the complex technical and coding problems. It has, by the way, long context capabilities. For the first time, OpenAI model are now going to have 1 million tokens. So so that's, I think, a big thing, because it definitely opens up some more possibilities, like particularly analyzing the videos, right? So you can actually do more of that with the larger 1 million token window, and it's for all the models, all the three models. There is a better and improved instruction following on this model, and they're also actually highly cost efficient. As I said, 26% less expensive than GPT-4o. In fact, um, the other thing is the knowledge cutoff is actually, I think, June 2024. So they have better knowledge, but it is only available via the API. So if you go to the Chat GPT model picker, you don't get to pick GPT 4.1. In fact, you don't have to, because they've already integrated the enhancements in GPT 4.1 into the GPT-4o within the Chat GPT. But when it comes to the API, it's a separate model. So you have to actually migrate to GPT 4.1 if you want to take advantage of the better pricing, or the the better output. And these models are, by the way, also generally available. You can use them in the Azure OpenAI, and you can, they're already available there to make use of. Now, from the OpenAI, there are other models also that came out. Actually, that is reasoning models, and that is like O3 reasoning model, as well as the o4-mini. So if you see, um, there are actually these two new models, O3 and o4-mini. And O3 models are very capable. This like they have like a lot of agentic capabilities, these models, right? So they can actually use, and this is the first time they can actually use and combine all the tools, like for example, searching the web, analyzing uploaded files, or like analyzing the data with Python, or even reasoning deeply with the visual input. So it is the first time that actually they can think with the visual input, think with the images. So if you upload, there are some demos out there. You can upload an image, and it can think about those images, right? And it can, in fact, crop it, zoom it, change it, enhance the quality. It can do a lot with those images compared to the previous models. um, it can even generate the images, right? Because in order to thinking, it may have some time have to actually even change it. So they're pretty good, very capable models. They are like, and O3, of course. O3 is particularly suited for the complex problem solving and multifaceted analysis. So it's really good for, let's say, coding, scientific research, mathematical, like those STEM kind of high quality use cases, or the image processing, etc. Those kind of things you can do it. O4-mini is more suited towards the volumetric based work, right? High economy, volume, and fast response if you want it, of course. But it has the same capabilities like agentic use, like the web browsing or Python code execution, image processing, or image generation kind of capabilities. It also does pretty well on the math and coding as well. It also can take the visual input. Now, in terms of the use cases, the O3 is actually particularly good for, as I said, programming, coding, scientific research, or business and consulting kind of work. O4-mini is suited for the data science, or non-STEM task, or high volume kind of queries that you can actually make use of. And it supports 200K context windows. So it's pretty good from that perspective. In terms of the cost, O3 is $10 per million input tokens. and o4-mini is $1.1. Now, in terms of where it actually stands compared to, let's say, the o1 model, which was the previous, like I would say, um, the larger reasoning model, is $15 for the input and $60 for the output. So this is definitely cheaper than those models. And similarly, the o3 mini was actually $1.1 for the input and $4.4 for the output. And if you see the o4 mini cost, it is the same. So you definitely get better reasoning models when it comes to the cost. You are getting better quality. You can get more agentic capabilities. You can use more tools. You actually have ability to now give the visual input. They can actually think with the images, and they are available right now in the Azure as well, in the standard global deployment and all those kind of things.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
a lot of new models, a lot of advancements. It's kind of a little head spinning and dizziness between what's been released by Meta, what's been released by Google, what's been released obviously by OpenAI. We're not talking the last 6 months. We're talking what seems like the last 6 days from all of these companies, which is great for us as users, consumers, developers. We get to leverage more advanced models and doing things at a cheaper rate. So
That's true, Jamie. And it would have helped if we did not have to track the numbering. Now my head really spins, right? It was much easier so far. Okay, GPT 3, GPT 3.5, and then 4 and 4.5. But now it is all over the place. Now I'm really, I don't know about, like, even the reasoning model, right? They're releasing o3 and then o4 mini. I mean, come on, just keep one number, please.
I think we just figured out our first application for our joint venture. It's an agent to help you figure out what model to use.
Well, exactly, um, and in fact, it is a battle. To be honest, lot of companies sometimes, and I don't know how they actually really are making those decisions, because there are, like, within Azure itself, for example, you have 1900 models. Now, of course, not all of them are families like individual models, but there are tons of family of the models. I don't know how companies are deciding, to be honest, which one to use. Of course, we promote what is available in Azure, but it's something that I'm keenly tracking, like in terms of how the companies are deciding to use which model for what. What I've seen so far is generally what they're trying to do is they're trying to provide all the major platforms. Like a lot of big companies, particularly, they're saying, okay, unless I'm like fully into only one platform, I will open up Azure. I will also open up, the GCP and the Amazon, and let the people have the choice. So they're trying to right now do more like democratic kind of options for people to choose and go from. But then the security reviews also actually come into question. Generally, I've seen the OpenAI and Azure takes a lead there. They're better in terms of the security as well as the content safety and other things. Generally, I have seen the Azure OpenAI takes a lead when given a chance in terms of the security review. But it's still, it is something that there is no specific guideline or the yardstick in order to how to provide that.
Yep, agreed. So jumping on to some other launches this past week, or at least announcements of things that will be forthcoming. Microsoft introduced a new feature coming to Copilot Studio, and that is going to be computer use. So, as we talked about before, there's obviously a few different organizations that are bringing computer use. Goes by a couple different names, but Anthropic has one, Google's got one, and OpenAI has another. So this is leveraging upon the things that OpenAI is doing, but this brings into the agent development tool set, which is Copilot Studio, the computer use capability. So what is it? Functionality. It really is the ability for agents that are built in Studio to be able to, let's say, click buttons, select menus, type information in the fields, all going through quote unquote websites. So obviously, this is all about how can you automate the things that people do on browsers, whether or not it's buying something from Amazon, planning a trip, Obviously, you get the notion that we all do a lot of things through web browsers. So how can we automate this? What's interesting about this feature or flavor capability coming into Copilot Studio is the security. So there's obviously a lot that Microsoft is doing to build in robust security, providing things like governance frameworks, and that all ensures compliance, aligning with organizational and various different industry standards, whether or not those standards are things like commerce and tight security around credit card information if you're going down that route. So what this really allows you to do as a Copilot Studio agent, leveraging its computer use, is all around efficiency and automation. So being able to do things like automated data entry, which reduces manual effort, things that a human would actually have to do, which theoretically could reduce errors because you're automating it through a computer. Kind of goes through why RPA was there in the first place. Being able to do market research, so it can automate the collection of various different market data from different online sources, all pulling it in and then analyzing that through, let's say, like some of the models that we were just talking about, right? And then, obviously, another use case here is around invoice processing. It could streamline the way that invoices are actually automated in terms of the data extraction from an invoice, put right into accounting systems, analyze that data from it. So at the heart of this, it's really about RPA or robotic process automation, but it's about transforming that. So being able to do real-time analysis, being able to pull things and respond to changes within the UI without having to break the flow. And if you've ever built some things in RPA, if some elements are not where they were yesterday, well, that could actually break your flow. So the intent of using this computer use through the Copilot Studio agent build is being able to just be adaptable, being able to understand, oh, yeah, this is where I need to go within the UI. Also, the key piece with Copilot Studio computer uses is really ease of use. So being able to define some of these tasks within natural language and then automatically creating what those flows will be to use the computer use. It also includes intelligent decision-making, obviously the visibility of what the computer use had actually tracked. So you can see history, screenshots, and the various different reasoning steps that quote-unquote computer use model actually did within the Copilot Studio agent. So, right now this is not out yet. So for individuals or companies that are interested in using this, there's a form that, again, those people can actually fill out to participate in early access research for this preview that's coming inside of Copilot Studio. And the other kind of side note on this is that there will be definitely more information and more likely some demos coming out in wow, I can't believe it's next month already, at Build, or Microsoft Build, which will be held in May of 2025, which is next month. So keep an eye out for more about this. And I think you're going to hear more and more from organizations, obviously, for how they're going to advance the computer use, because that's obviously sort of like this next stage that we're seeing in involvement for agentic-based applications.
Cool. So let's talk about another launch, Jimmy. This is actually Cohere Embed 4. This is actually a new model that was launched by Cohere, and it is available within the Azure OpenAI as well, and the Cohere's platform, API platform, as well as you can also actually find it in the Amazon SageMaker as well to use, but primarily in the Azure and the Cohere API platform. It is a multimodal embedding model, okay, for the advanced search and retrieval in AI applications. So particularly when you have like really complex documents like PDFs and graphs and tables, which has like text as well as the visual elements, the searching can become actually difficult. And what it does is it actually uses the embedding. So it essentially translates all of that into the vectorized, the representation. And the vector representation is actually then really good to find using the similarity and other things find the essential, the relevant items. So it can convert those documents into the vectors, and then actually it helps the also called the embeddings, and that's how actually you can use it to retrieve the information from those documents. Um, it can process documents up to 128,000 tokens, which is roughly about 200 pages, so pretty good. It can do a lot of that. It covers 100 plus languages, including even Arabic, Japanese, Korean, and French. And it is also optimized for the security focused regulated industries, right? So it can be deployed in the VPC or on premise as well for the data security purpose. Now, the Cohere actually has multiple models. Embed is one line of model, which is particularly for the retrieval of the information from the enterprise knowledge. They also have re-ranking, which is generally more from the like searching, or I would say like creating the augmented, uh, I would say, output. And then they have also models like command R, which is essentially used actually to generate the output, the generative part of it. So that's how these models were, like embed, command, as well as the re-rank. Now, embed 4 helps you, as I said, right, do the embeddings. Now, I had one question, Jamie. When we, in the, let's say, compare this to OpenAI world, right? If you're using the models, let's say like GPT-4 Omni or GPT 4.1, to search the enterprise knowledge, you will have to actually use another tool, like either they have text embedding, or generally most of the companies use something called AI search, let's say in Azure, right? Azure AI search, which actually helps find the information in the enterprise knowledge repository. And it also has the ability to actually do the vector search and things like that. So it can do that based on the vector, and there are many ways, right? Hybrid search and semantic search and all those kind of things. So generally the companies are using the AI search to assist in the knowledge finding for these models, right? GPT-4o. But it looks like the Cohere Embed 4 actually does what the Azure AI Search does. So you don't have to use that. You can actually use the Embed 4, which actually converts documents into embeddings. And using that, you can search, and then you can actually take it directly into the models like Command R, etc., which they have. So that's their vision of doing things. Is that the right understanding, Jamie?
Not exactly. So you still need to use an embedding model with something like Azure AI Search. The Azure AI Search only holds the embeddings, or quote unquote, the representation of cosine similarity, which is the mathematical equation that's used to create the embedding. So what you would use is something like this Cohere embedded model to create the embeddings, and those embeddings are then stored inside of the Azure AI Search to do its search. So usually for like all the search index that I've created, it used to be off of something like the Ada model, whether it's Ada 2 or Ada 3, to create the embeddings. But this allows you to do more sophisticated embeddings off of multimodal content. That's the way you want to think about it. Is I could use this Cohere Embed 4 model to create the quote unquote embedding numerical representation, but then use a vector store, which in this case would be Azure AI Search, to store that embedding and then search over. So that's how you want to think about it in tandem. To me, this is a more high-powered, more powerful embedding model that I would use in conjunction with something like Azure AI Search. I know we've got a couple of other topics, just real quick, just to put this on the radar of folks, because I'm sure, like you just said, we could talk about searching and embedding for a long time, and maybe that's a separate episode. But I think all the rage is, whether or not right now it's MCP or the ability for agents to talk to each other. And we talked about on the last episode that Google has something called O4-mini, which is a framework for allowing agents to talk to each other no matter what platform they're built upon. So there's been some news this past week that Microsoft, through Semantic Kernel, now speaks Google's O4-mini. So just as a reminder, O4-mini is really just a protocol that wraps around JSON for representation of what the agent is. So it's not code, it's not credentials, it's just, hey, here's my structure. So it's a representation of an agent that can be sent over via just plain old HTTP. So this allows organizations that are focused on development with a Microsoft stack, whether or not that's with AI Foundry or just using semantic kernel out of the gate, to actually build agents using semantic kernel and then being able to expose that agent through this A2A framework. And that really is the panacea, if you will, for interoperability. And what the A2A framework was really built around is that interoperability. So it doesn't matter what you're building on, what you're using, what you're constructing, as long as it's got this quote unquote JSON payload that understands how to communicate between agents. That's what is being released through semantic kernel. So, the end game here is that it's going to reduce the complexity for individuals to create agents and objects and be able to share that with other platforms. So the note here is that, Microsoft is really, nodding their head to say that, agents could be created in a multi-cloud strategy, and there needs to be a way to tie things like semantic kernel to this Google A2A platform or, foundational piece. So to me, that's a great step in a direction that will allow for any and all agents to speak to each other.
And in the final news, actually, OpenAI had released few models earlier, which were essentially transcribe, the GPT-4o transcribe, GPT-4o mini transcribe, and GPT-4o mini TTS, which is text to speech. These models were actually released 3 weeks ago. We did cover it in one of the episodes in detail about those models. But these models are now available within the Azure as well. So just a quick summary: transcribe is essentially text. Essentially, you're creating from the speech, you're creating the text, right? So it can take an input of text or the audio and then give you the text. Of course, the transcribe is pretty good. It's fast, but if you want even the faster quality, faster actually speed of the transcription, then you go for the mini transcribe. Of course, it's cheaper. It can do like things like live captioning and quick response and things like that. Generally, they can be used pretty well into, let's say, the training or the customer call center or automated meeting notes, that kind of use cases. And then the other model was GPT-4o mini TTS, which is text to speech. So you give in text and then it generates actually an audio. So it's the other way. And then you use that to, for example, interactive voice output for chatbots or virtual assistants or accessibility tools and educational apps. Now, the important thing is this, right? So they already had something called Whisper, which actually could do some of the transcription. Um, but why are they launching this? The reason they did it, actually, this is based on the LLM capability, right? So that's why the name is GPT-4o. So it's part of the LLM capability. The earlier Whisper model were actually not based on the LLM capability. It was actually a conventional the models, that the speech models and the text model that they were using. So that's a difference, and that's what new here. I think the Whisper, I think, will remain for some time, but it might go away. Some of the capabilities will go away, but these models are pretty good. They are better capability, better quality. So if companies are using Whisper, etc., they can actually probably look at migrating to these models as well. In terms of the speech, they generally are, again, because they're LLM based, they are also actually calculated based on the tokens. It's like $6 for a million token for the audio input, and for the output, it could be anywhere like $10 or $5, depending on what models you are actually opting for. In fact, text to speech is actually a bit like output wise, it's $12, and input wise is 60 cents. So that's all, Jamie. That's all for the week.
Sounds good. Yeah, covered a lot there. Hopefully people are still around at this point in time. If you are, thank you for listening, and thank you for watching our 50th episode.
Yeah. And, keep listening.